Hello, my name is Cassaundra Excell, and I'd like to take a moment today to talk to you about vouchers in the school system and whether or not they are constitutional. My thesis for this presentation is that school vouchers are constitutional because they allow parents to choose the method in which their child is educated, allow the child to learn in a safe and positive environment and culture, and can be set to be fund only non-religious curriculum. Before we go any further, a bit of history. In 1642, a law was passed in Massachusetts that required parents to provide their children with an education. Satan could more easily corrupt those who could not read the Bible than those who could. This was the philosophy behind this. And so how this worked is parents would pay out of pocket to bring a schoolmaster into town, and the entire town would pay the schoolmaster to take their children. And if the parents couldn't pay, then the government would step in and pay for them. And this is really how the school was born. The problem is that not all families believed in the same things. Some parents refused to send their child to be corrupted by that other religion. So you had a conflict there. So those parents who could afford to do so would take their child out of the public school system and educate them at home. And what they would do oftentimes is they would hire a private tutor. And this tutor taught the same basic subjects as you learned in the typical classroom, how to read, how to write, how to count. But they taught religion how the family wanted them to teach religion. And so this is really where you start to see the divide between public and private education. And as you fast forward, eventually religion left the public schools, and private schools took the place of private tutors. There was still the gap between the rich and the poor, though, because the rich could afford private schools, the poor could not. So if a rich person did not like the public school, if it was a bad environment, unsafe, any reason at all, they can afford to leave, while someone who is lacking income could not. There's also a perceived difference in the quality between the public and private schools, and there's two fronts here, which is the quality of learning and then the culture. So the solution here is vouchers. What's the difference between a public and a private school? Academically, very little. Most private schools provide the same level of education and quality of education as presented in public schools. Some private schools may even do a worse job, particularly in the area of mathematics. So what do public school parents really want? They're wanting the culture of the private school. And how that works is parents who are willing to pay a significant amount of money are more apt to be highly involved in their child's education. By making sacrifices, they have raised their investment. By raising their investment, they are more inclined to want to see a return on that investment. So as a result, their involvement is higher, and they have changed the culture of the school. So higher parent involvement means higher grades, less drug abuse and violence. And the parents themselves often have a higher level of education, so they're able to help their child more. So the entire culture is then changed by the parents. Some arguments against vouchers are that they are unconstitutional because of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, which says basically that the state shall remain separate from church. The other fear is that it'll be a culture changer. Because vouchers cover the cost of tuition, the worry is that the families using the vouchers will not have the same level of investment. So how you address these fears is you modify it. Vouchers can be modified to pay for non-religious curriculum only, so this removes the worry that the state and the church will begin mixing. You can also put a limit on how much tuition the vouchers can pay for. This ensures that the parent using the vouchers still pays a portion of the tuition and still invests in their child's education. Thus, modified vouchers meet the needs of both the public and the private school parents while remaining constitutional. Any questions?
How many religious private schools are there? Is there enough to warrant the use of vouchers?
Most private schools are religious. Only about 16 or 17% of private schools are non-sectarian, which means that they're not religious. So if vouchers would need to be modified, then there is enough need to warrant their modification. Not really. It's true that there would be more competition in that when you have the option suddenly available to families who cannot afford private school, but now they can go to private school if they don't like their public school system, then you'll have the public schools losing students, which means that they will be losing money. And this will encourage them to change their system. So when they start making their system better, then students will stay, but then the private school will then change and make their system better, so more students will come. And now you've got competition, so the entire community benefits as a whole. So in the long run, it helps the public schools.
So are you trying to say that this could even the playing ground for students with the different income levels?
Actually, yes. How the funding for public school works is you'll get a set amount of money from the state per student that you have. And then any extra money you have comes from local taxes, mostly property taxes. And so what schools do is they need the consent of the community involved to raise the taxes or to levy the taxes. And what you have here is in poor communities, they often cannot afford to pay more property tax. They cannot afford to lose more money. And so that means that there's less money for the schools, which hurts the school. So schools in poor areas receive less funding, which means that their educational system isn't as well, and students cannot leave for the private school because they don't have enough money. So vouchers would allow them to then go to the private schools, which would then level the playing ground. There's no more questions, then I think that's it. Thank you for letting me present to you.
Thanks, Cass.